You just got your asses whipped by a bunch of goddamn nerds.
Brian Schrader, I cannot tell you how happy I am to be back on these waves with you. How you doing, buddy?
Good. Yeah, it feels like it's been a while.
Do you feel?
Couple weeks.
Wait, how many went? Okay, this is good. Sorry.
We're clearly a little bit rusty. Can't even do the cold open.
I'm going to have to cut that part out there as we edit. Keep it fresh.
It's our flaws that make us lovable.
Do you feel fresh?
I wish I could say I feel fresh. I don't feel fresh at all.
What have you been up to? You want to tell our wonderful fans what you've been up to? By the way, we are up to 600 Instagram followers.
Wowza.
600. Yeah. And most of them are not creepy Russian bots.
Only some.
Only some. I do my best to sift through.
We're not in a position to be banning Russian bots. If they want to come like our Instagram page and follow us, that's totally fine.
Tell me. So what have you done?
Just been summer and traveling a little bit. Went to the lake a couple times. Just been busy for no good reason. I don't feel like I've been busy, but I haven't gotten anything done. I think that's the summer. I'm ready for my kids to go back to school so I can get some work done.
Dude, there's always – we've talked about this at length before. There's the expectation that going into the summer that somehow we're going to be extremely productive. That those chores to do at home, it's going to get – the list is going to get shorter. I feel the same way. I have accomplished nothing this summer. Nothing.
I mowed the grass yesterday. That's about it.
For the first time this summer.
Yeah, for the first time. I just, finally decided to. No, I agree. It's I feel bad, but as a kid, you look forward to summer, and as a parent, you're like, oh, school's about to start. Thank God.
It is so true. And there's so much guilt that goes. I feel guilty about it. I want to be with my kids, but then I just don't. It's a wonderful 8 hours, 7 hours, 4 hours, whatever long it is. But I mean, my youngest is upstairs right now watching television because she does like TV. I don't know how your kids are different in terms of their TV watching, but
they're pro TV.
They're pro TV. They dig it.
Sure.
My audio quality looks terrible on Facebook. So sorry to those who are watching Facebook Live or watching our video later on YouTube. Hey, let's jump into it because we've got a lot to cover today. First and foremost, let's do it, okay? Quick promo, shout out, what are you going to call it, for our social media pages. You can find us on Instagram, sports.nerds. That's where we do most of our work. We're also on the Twitter. You're on Facebook if you're watching our Facebook live stream, fb.me/sportsnerds. Brian, the big news today in terms of our sphere, our world, is that our PGA Championship pool has started. Ended up with about 45 folks involved this time. So it's been a successful run. I think a successful endeavor this summer doing the major pools. So we'll continue to do that. I guess what could we do next if we're running out of golf majors? What's next? We're not going to do fantasy football.
US tennis, right?
And I'll let you set that one up. How about that?
How about you? August 27th, within a couple of weeks.
It's coming up. All right, let's start with a light story. Okay, before we get into something heavy. Are you familiar with the Marquette King 1043 The Fan? What's going on here?
I thought at first you were going to say, am I familiar with Marquette King? Yeah, I mean, I know him.
You are.
I'm a Raiders fan. Of course I know who Marquette King is.
So can you? Okay,
I've only kind of heard. You have to fill me in. I'm not in Denver, so I'm not hip to the drama that is Denver sports radio. But
okay, well,
if it's Marquette King, my interest has peaked because I'm sure it's not something boring.
The significance of the story is not really the Broncos or Marquette King, but more the relationship between, I guess, athletes and the media, because this all started a week ago. Marquette King was on 1043 The Fan with Brandon Stokely and D-Mac, who I'm not afraid to say it right here on the air because I don't care, are a couple of spares. Don't like listening to them, don't like their content at all. The vast majority of our listeners are not from Denver, so I don't really care.
And I bet you they don't have the balls to say anything about us on their radio show.
Ooh, look at that. All publicity is good publicity.
Next time you listen to DMAC and Stokely, they're going to pretend like they didn't even hear what Sanders said about them. They're just going to go about their business trying to save face, but we all know what happened.
It's going to happen. But it's just awkward. It was this awkward interview between those three, and Marquette King was just like not answering questions. And so he left the interview. They stopped the interview. And then for the last, I suppose, 5 or 6 days, there's been this passive aggressive beef between these three on social media, mostly on Twitter. And then it actually, over the weekend, something happened at training camp in which Marquette King wanted to punch DMAC or something like that. I looked at DMAC. I mean, he's got a punchable face, right? That's from some Will Ferrell movie, but it's true. He's got very much a punchable face. I've caddied for Brandon Stokely a couple times. Not a huge fan of that dude. Very much an asshole. You tend to learn a lot about who people are when you're on the golf course for them or with them, and you're working for him. I'm not a big fan. I don't know who Marquette King is as a person. I have no idea. But this is interesting to me because now there's this massive beef between 104.3 The Fan, which I guess probably the most popular radio station, sports radio station here in Denver, and the Broncos, who, I mean, everybody sucks up to the Broncos in this town. Everybody. It makes you want to throw up. So anyhow, that's what happened. I don't know if you have anything to add to that. It's just an interesting story. It's kind of funny what's going on. Your brother actually told me about it.
I don't know. I mean, if you I'm sure everyone listening to this knows who Marquette King is. He's a punter, right? It's bizarre to have a punter embroiled in any sort of drama, but like he became sort of a household name last year. And maybe was he with the Raiders the year before that too? Because he would always, he'd have a good punt and then he'd do like silly dances, and he got penalty flags all the time. For he picked up a referee's flag one time and threw it, and he taunts people, and he just is like this big personality or whatever. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to make of this fight. I sort of assume that Marquette King is of the philosophy that there's no such thing as bad publicity. You know what I mean? That if he's going to get in a fight and people are talking about them, as long as he punts the ball well, I suppose. It doesn't really matter. I'm not sure what stake DMAC or Brandon Stokely have in getting in a fight with a punter on the Broncos. I mean, again, I didn't hear the original interview. I don't know how it started, but it seems to me that I'm not calling Marquette King a troll, but that his behavior is kind of trolly, right? That he's generated a controversy where no one really even seems to know what the controversy is, and that all DMAC and Brandon Stokely need to do to make this go away is to simply stop talking about it, right? But they're kind of doing the opposite. So I don't know. It is really weird. Yeah.
So basically, what Marquette King has done, or no? Who's trolling who? I wonder. I guess I see.
Oh, I think he's trolling them.
You do?
Well, I mean, they have a radio show. They have an audience.
Those dudes are definitely trying to.
He's a punter. Like, honestly, most of the time, do you even know the punter on your team's name? Right, which is sort of a point that they've made, right? Like, why is this punter talking so much? Blah blah blah. I've seen Broncos fans sort of go at each other on Twitter about this. Like, that guy should shut up, or you should get kicked off the team, or all this sort of stuff. He's just a punter. He's replaceable. And then a bunch of people are like, actually, no, he's like the best punter in football. We definitely want him, and that sort of stuff. So there does seem to be some controversy about like what the fallout should be from this, and who's to blame, and who should be punished, if anybody should be punished, and that sort of stuff. And my point is, it's weird for punter, right? Who was the other punter that you had on the show? Didn't you have Chris Cluey on the show?
Yeah.
Right? Like, he's an example of a football player who's not a household name, who's not necessarily a superstar, who made his name by being outspoken. In that case, it was like for being political, right? Not for being silly or whatever. But I see this as Marquette King trying to parlay however long he's in the NFL into something bigger, right? Into being on Dancing with the Stars, or being on Celebrity Big Brother, or having his own radio show or something like that. And I think he's that we're talking about this right now means that he's getting what he wants. I think that DMAC and Brandon Stokely, at least from what I can tell, are genuinely upset about this and think it's a real issue that needs to be covered. And he's probably, Marquette King is probably laughing about it. As a Raiders fan, I was laughing about this move too, because I had a bunch of friends who are Broncos fans who were like, "Hey, we got your punter, ha ha ha," and I was like, "That's really good news for you, because you guys punt a lot, so it's good that you have a good punter." So
it's a punter. Who's your fantasy football punter?
We haven't drafted yet. I'll take him in the first round.
There's no such thing as a fantasy football punter.
Oh, there is in my league. You didn't draft a punter last year?
I didn't.
I run a two punter league.
Shit.
2-punter league, and you can put one in your flex spot too, so you can have 3 punters.
Oh, okay. Let's very quickly crush the joy that was in that conversation to talk about Urban Meyer, right? Urban Meyer. There's a lot going on at Ohio State, and I like Ohio State football fans even less after this week because I don't know if you saw some of the protests. They hate him out here because of Utah?
No, like the Michigan Ohio thing. Like I didn't know that till I moved out here. It's crazy.
Oh, you're in Michigan. I'm in Denver.
I'm in Michigan. I'm sorry, out here where I am. Yeah, I'm in Michigan.
Okay. I forgot that we're in different cities.
Like if you want people like you out here, just like talk shit about Ohio.
And it works.
I'm sure it's the same thing down there. Yeah. It's like a rivalry, I guess. I don't know.
So Urban Meyer let's try to sum this up. Assistant coach, wide receiver coach, several instances in which his wife had called the police about domestic violence, domestic abuse stuff, track record of this. Urban Meyer keeps the dude on staff. Basically admits last Friday in a really awkward press conference that he understood or knew what was going on. Didn't say that, I'm sorry, I didn't do anything, but he did acknowledge that he knew some sort of history existed. So the big hubbub or conversation over the last 5 days has been what the hell was Urban Meyer doing giving this press conference, but also what can we expect from Ohio State University in terms of how they're going to handle this situation. And so what's your take on everything?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that oftentimes we hear these stories and we try and sort of parse the differences and try and figure out what the details are. And sometimes, when you dig deep, you say, oh, look, it wasn't as bad as it seemed at first. Or sometimes, it's way, way worse than it seemed. And I think that instinct is one that in 2018, people are not hip to anymore, that they're not really wanting to get down and investigate the nuance of any particular domestic violence or assault or sexual assault sort of claim. I think what the Me Too movement, the sort of the ethos of 2018 has been all about has been, let's not try and split hairs and figure out if someone technically was on the right side of the rules or the regulations or the law. But instead, the ethos of 2018 is one where if there's any sort of whiff of something unsavory happening and you know about it, you should say something, right? If you see something, say something. If something doesn't seem right, you should be saying something, and you should be doing it loudly, right? It's very much a philosophy of we should assume that anyone who's making a claim about this sort of thing is telling the truth, and we should work really, really hard to sort of do the right thing to make sure that it comes to light, right? That it doesn't get kind of swept under the rug, right? So I mean, there's been articles out about Urban Meyer thing saying, well, look, technically he did this and he did that, and so maybe there's not as much guilt to be had here. But I think that there's not going to be a lot of appetite for that sort of explanation. I think that the expectation now is that if you've got something like that going on, that you scream it from the rooftops, that you do everything in your power to, as an article I just read talked about, actually claim the moral high ground and do the right thing regardless of the consequences. And it doesn't look like that's what Urban Meyer did here, right? Will he get fired? Will he not? It's hard to say. He's a huge name. Unfortunately, I think that matters a lot. There's probably legal things with his contract and that sort of stuff. It kind of looks to me like what they're trying to do here is ride out the storm and wait for some other big thing to take over the news cycle, and then not really fire him and he'll be around. So I tell you what, whenever the story broke and we talked about it when it first happened, my instinct was that there was no possible way that he would be able to survive this thing. But I think maybe there's a little bit of a change in there. But I think that's a problem.
I was, I don't want to say appalled, but I was certainly disappointed in Urban Meyer. I've never been a huge fan of Urban Meyer, so don't get me wrong on that front. But in terms of what you and I study, rhetorically, his apology speech, if you want to call it that, last Friday was just terrible. He didn't own up to anything, or he didn't at least show remorse for having an awareness of what was going on. It was all about Urban. I need to go back and find the transcript if it's anywhere. But folks, if you can find it out there, I would definitely suggest that maybe Brian will, or one of us will find it here and post it to Facebook momentarily. just not a good speech, right? It doesn't have any of those elements that we expect in apology. And in fact, it kind of reminded me of, do you remember Ryan Braun's speech when he didn't admit to cheating on baseball?
The first one or the second one?
The first one. Where
the first one, it wasn't an apology. The first one where he blamed the guy?
Yes.
Got that dude fired?
Yeah. Ruined a guy's life, which I would say that Urban Meyer and maybe Ryan Braun are cut from the same cloth. But I don't want to spend too much time on that because I know we'll probably have to return to it. I do think that Ohio State is under a microscope that could very much lead to the end of Urban Meyer's career there. I mean, we talked about the Ohio State wrestling scandal or situation a few weeks back, and that seems to be heating up as these wrestlers are actually filing lawsuits against the university. And I think we can assume that Ohio State's going to do whatever it can to sever ties from any scandalous or salacious storylines or personnel that they have on staff. Which, I mean, that seems like a rational train of thought, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, you know, you keep thinking at some point that there's not going to be, to use a term I used just a few minutes ago, that the appetite for this sort of stuff is going to go away. Mm-hmm. Where the logic is going to be, under no circumstances can we tolerate this sort of stuff, whether or not you're the perpetrator or you're a person who knew about it and didn't tell anybody, or if you kind of going off of what you just talked about and Urban Meyer's apology, if your defense is, I did the bare minimum of what the rules and regulations and law required me of, and even if you think I should have done more, I didn't break the law. Well, that's not an apology, dude. I think the appetite, I keep feeling like the appetite for that sort of shit is gonna go away. And we're just not going to have it. But like I said before, I don't. That's what I wish would happen, but it doesn't seem like that's what's going to happen. Like I really thought the Ray Rice thing, was really, we had turned the corner. Like that was a place where no teams would touch that guy. And I think a lot of people thought that was going to be the way that professional sports, we'll call college sports professional sports. It's almost professional anyways. Would deal with this sort of stuff, but it doesn't seem to be the case, right? I mean, we've got a similar example of who's the closer that Toronto had, who got suspended for domestic violence.
Ozuna?
Yeah, Ozuna, and he just came off his suspension and was immediately picked up by the Astros, right? Mm-hmm. And there was some hemming and hawing and people who were upset about it, but for the most part, the Astros made what they thought was a good business decision to pick up a better closer, and they got rid of their closer who they weren't happy with, and they think it puts them in a better position to win. And I guess there's enough people who are okay with that's what's going to go down. I feel like that Urban Meyer is probably a bigger deal to college football than Ozuna is to the Astros and their one World Series championship or whatever, or one recent one. They have one before.
It's quite unfortunate.
But my point is, where it seems like we're really changing direction, we're pivoting, and we're not going to tolerate stuff. Then this sort of stuff happens. People don't care.
I mean, you brought up something that's really important to highlight, which is the value of money, or the fact that money as a perspective through which we can view these situations tends to be that perspective that is valued the most. I mean, it's not about necessarily kind of emotional abuse or backlash. It's not about people. It's really just about money. And I think I tend to agree with you there. I hadn't thought about that in a couple of days, but Ohio State's going to have to bite a very, very big bullet if they're going to fire Urban Meyer, because I think in his contract, no matter what, I think he's going to get $35 million. That's a lot of money, especially for a school that may get sued for hundreds of millions of dollars for their what their wrestling program did in the 80s and 90s. But alas, let's pivot here towards the main topic, which is, I don't know how we want to phrase this, Major League Baseball, and eventually we'll get to it, the NFL's inability to really leverage new technologies to share or spread their brand. We came at this, we talked about it several weeks ago, Rob Manfred's comments about Mike Trout, that was it during the All-Star game or during the Home Run Derby that he had said that?
It was right around the All-Star.
Trout wasn't being – What was okay? So
he basically
Trout,
said he wasn't marketing himself, right? That Trout is not. What does it say? Player marketing is one thing for sure. The player, Manfred said earlier in the day, you cannot market a player passively. You can't market anything passively. You need people to engage with those whom you are trying to market in order to have effective marketing. We're very interested in having our players more engaged and having higher profile players and helping our players develop their individual brand. But that involves the player being actively engaged. And so
he says this, right?
Kind of directed at Trout. Oh, he goes on to say, Mike's a great player and a really nice person, but he's made certain decisions about what he wants to do and what he doesn't want to do and how he wants to spend his free time and how he doesn't want to spend his free time. That's up to him. If he wants to engage and be more active in that area, I think we could help him make his brand really, really big, but he has to make a decision that he's prepared to engage in that area. It takes time and effort.
Okay, so first off, where do you stand on this?
He's not wrong.
Okay,
Trout's the best player in baseball, hands down, and has been for a number of years. Not to be like the dude who said, "Yeah, I heard of that band long before you," but I was high on Trout when he lost the MVP to Miguel Cabrera with the year that Miggy won the Triple Crown, and then I think there was a different year. Didn't Miguel win them back to back? That Trout should have won them both of those years because we're sort of in love with, you know, the long ball and big offensive numbers, even though they're somewhat updated, right? Or outdated rather. Like, who gives a shit what your average is? If you are into baseball at all, you know that's not the best number to be looking at. That Mike Trout is obviously a better player than Miguel Cabrera, if only because he doesn't play first base or DH, that he plays center field and contributes defensive, makes defensive contributions, right? So yeah, I mean, I think it's true that Mike. I think the point that Manfred is trying to make is that it's weird that you've got the best player in the game that is not widely understood to be the best player in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? And what is the explanation for that? Well, maybe it's because he plays on the West Coast. Maybe it's because he plays. I mean, you can't say it's a small market team, but the Angels, for whatever reason, kind of behave more like a small market team than a big market team. Is it because he doesn't market himself? I don't know. It's definitely true that Major League Baseball is not getting all the benefits of a bona fide superstar. And so I guess there's at least a part of me that says that Manfred might be right, that Trout could do more to make himself. Not that he's not a household name, but he could do more to sort of embrace his superstar status. I'll say this too. I guess he doesn't have to if he doesn't want to.
I guess I just find it quite hypocritical that Manfred would make these comments as the head of an organization that has done everything to keep people like Bryce Harper from being outspoken, right? Trying to really get the personality out of Bryce Harper, who has the potential to be as much of a superstar as Mike Trout. Now he's in that second tier. I mean, let's not even call it a second tier, right? I mean, Trout is his own beast, right? Yeah. His own animal. He's the best player we've seen in the last 50 years. But Major League Baseball, even when Bud Selig was heading it up, didn't do a very good job of creating an atmosphere in which those personalities that people would be attracted to could thrive. I mean, Barry Bonds was kind of one of those personalities, or could have been made that personality. Like obviously there was all of the elements surrounding Barry Bonds regarding HGH and steroids and all of that, and kind of the stigma attached to it. But I mean, consider Major League Baseball could have easily played up Barry Bonds as the bad guy in order to draw attention to that player, that moment, in a way that would have brought attention, would have brought popularity to the sport. I mean, I think it could do the same thing with Bryce Harper. And a lot of those players are probably okay with playing the bad guy. They enjoy it. They thrive in it. And, you have Harper, you have Trout, you have this possibility of these players that you can accentuate their personalities, you can leverage it. I don't think it's the players as much as it is Major League Baseball and those media outlets that Major League Baseball has partnered with, the ESPNs, the Fox Sportses, that just don't understand how they're supposed to frame and circulate these brands, because it just can't be that hard, man. Like, it can't be. Look, I look at the NBA. I look at how great the NBA is doing it. Or, you and I watch a lot of European soccer. Look at the personalities over there and how those organizations and those leagues really play up those personalities. I don't think it has to be up to the player as much. I think you can create an environment, an atmosphere in which you let the league really circulate those brands, and you don't put the onus or the responsibility on the individuals because they just should be performing on the field and be, and let them be them. I mean, You brought up Cabrera. Like, that dude could have been a superstar. I mean, he is obviously a fantastic player, Hall of Famer, but there were 5-6 years there where we should have been focusing all of our attention on Miguel Cabrera. He could have been made into a personality. He could have been made into I don't want to say a caricature, but he could have been the head of brands, could have been face of brands, all of this stuff. I think it's more the institution of Major League Baseball, the institution of not taking advantage of the environment now, of the viewers now, of that, I'd say 18 to 35 demographic who really could be primed to watch this stuff, to watch these players. They just don't know how to do it. And I don't know that they're trying, but they are certainly ignorant when it comes to it. That's my take.
Yeah, I mean, I think deep down what Manfred wants is Mike Trout to be LeBron, and he's never going to be LeBron, right? It's not. I don't think that you've got major companies beating on Mike Trout's door to come do kind of nationally televised ad spots, and he's saying no to that. I doubt very much that's what's happening. I think that big companies realize that baseball doesn't have the same cachet that basketball does, right? For a variety of reasons. When you're talking about basketball, the superstars are on the court all the time. They're scoring tons and tons of points. They're playing, big minutes. They're constantly doing something. It's not true of baseball, right? As good as Mike Trout is, baseball is the type of game where it's not obvious. If you picked any one single game that Mike Trout was playing in, it may not be necessarily obvious based on the eye test that he's far and away the best player on the field, right? Does that make sense? Where in the case of other superstars in basketball, it is the case, right? LeBron James is bigger and way higher up on the intersection of size / athleticism than anyone else on the court. He has the ball all the time. He constantly scores a bunch of points. He has big plays. He's Mike Trout will never be that. But put differently, baseball will never be basketball, right? You can't market it in the exact same way. And I think that's what we've seen is largely a retreat into regional markets. I suspect that, whatever team is kind of around you, you're probably seeing your players doing kind of local spots, but it's not, it doesn't have the big, again, the same, not to reuse words, but it doesn't have the same cachet baseball in sort of on a national stage as it should. And this is not a new problem for baseball, by the way. If Mike Trout were in New York and playing for the Yankees, or even playing for the Mets, or he was playing in LA, or he was playing for Boston, or was playing for a huge market team, he was playing for the Cubs, right? I don't think he wouldn't have to do anything differently necessarily, but he would be a bigger star. It's sort of an unfortunate reality when it comes to baseball that if you're playing in some of these less historically important or historically popular teams or markets, that it doesn't matter how good you are, right?
Mm-hmm. And they're always going to play.
It's not that good.
No, and they're also in a town where they're going to play second fiddle to the Dodgers, right? Always. No matter how terrible the Dodgers are or how great the Angels are, the Dodgers are. They're up there in terms of the Lakers in terms of popularity in that city.
And this is not Mike Trout's fault. It's Major League Baseball's fault. And this is a conversation that we've had this a million times, right? Like, do they need to increase the pace of play? What can they do to make it more attractive to younger audiences? Do games need to be free? Do they need to be streamed online? Do we need to have time limits? Whatever, right? To make it more appealing to younger people. I don't know, man. I grew up and baseball I loved baseball. I think all kids my age, probably maybe whatever. I was going to offer a caveat, but I'll just keep my mouth shut. Liked baseball a lot and liked baseball stars, and they were household names, even if they weren't where you were from, right? I don't know. We grew up at around the same time. We probably loved a lot of the same baseball players, right? I was a big David Justice fan. I think that was true even if you weren't an Atlanta Braves fan or, later where he played.
Is there too much of it now? Is there too much of the product out there now? Like, is it too available?
Sports?
No, just baseball.
Baseball.
I mean, there is, like, are you drawn to that Sunday night baseball game when it's not the Red Sox? I mean, you and I might be, but is the kind of middle of the road fan. Like, that used to be something that was people tuned into not even that long ago. That used to be, scheduled viewing, right?
Yeah.
People wanted to do that. Am I wrong? Maybe I am.
No, I don't think you're wrong. I mean, I don't think it is. I don't think the Fall Classic is the Fall Classic anymore. I don't think that as many people gear up to watch it. And I'm not sure what's the chicken and what's the egg or whatever here. But like, is it because only the World Series is televised on Fox, right? Even some of the division and championship series are on TNT. You're not watching them on regular TV. I think they're too late for young kids to stay up and watch them. At least if you live in the Eastern time zone, like I do. Like you're not making the product accessible to people, and it might just go away. I don't know. Maybe this is a good transition to this other article that you wanted to talk about. The one that's like, it's possible that football, that baseball, that sports, the way that they are currently constituted, either have to make drastic changes to keep up with the times, with the way that people are interested in watching them, or interested in consuming them, or find them at all entertaining, or they're going to die, right? Like, is that the thrust? I don't know if you want to talk about this article.
It's an article by a guy named Eugene Wee. He is, I don't know, he's not necessarily a whiz kid anymore. He's been around for a long time, but he's considered one of the smartest people in tech, one of the smartest people in Silicon Valley. And he started a blog actually 17 years ago. It's called Remains of the Day. And he just kind of goes off on things and offers some really, really insightful perspective on various topics related to tech and digital media. But this is an article called Beware the Lessons of Growing Up Galapagos. If you could find it, read it. It's fantastic. It's not too much of a read. And Wee's article is really one part of it, right? One part of his argument is that the death of the NFL will come at the hands not of CTE or of flag protests, but rather the fact that the NFL is as a whole being led by an older generation that simply will not embrace the potential of new media technologies, in particular putting games online, not allowing users to repost content on Instagram. One of the examples that he uses actually relates to baseball because House of Highlights is an Instagram account that has millions of followers. It's fantastic. And it just shows highlights from NBA games. NBA players follow it. LeBron makes comments on it. And the popularity of the game is kind of housed in those kind of interactions, those kind of moments, those kind of products. Major League Baseball won't even let people take cuts from the game and air them on Twitter without, they'll take them down, copyright infringement, all of this stuff. And so his argument is that, okay, baseball and the NFL are in the same boat in the fact that they're just not acknowledging the audience that they want to be able to reach. They're not even acknowledging the buying power of those audiences. And rather quickly, they're going to be left behind because it's going to be sports like soccer and even cricket which have recognized the value of those clips, the value of understanding how to package your content in a way that today's viewer consumes it. That is 10, 15-second videos. That is, short audio clips, podcasts, all of this stuff. It's not the full entire thing. And so that's basically his argument. And I really liked it. I think he's kind of spot on when you consider, especially with the NFL, the people who are running the organization, they just have no idea what their audiences want. Because once you get people like you and I who die off or stop watching, who's going to be that generation behind us? I don't envision our kids sitting down and watching the NFL. I don't see them enjoying a 2.5 hour game because they're going to be drawn to those sports that embrace the medium and the content, or how that content is packaged in today's media landscape.
Yeah, and the point that he's making about the NFL, and it's true about Major League Baseball too, is really, really simple. It is those products were born out of a bygone era, right? When there was not that much choice, that you couldn't go and watch something online. You couldn't go watch something on demand. You couldn't go watch something on Netflix. You couldn't watch a recap of a baseball game or a football game. If you missed it, you were reading the box score. And none of that is true anymore, right? So were people willing to invest 3.5 hours into a football game 20, 30 years ago when they had no other options? Yes. Are they willing to do that now? It seems like the answer is no, right? His argument is the decline in viewership has nothing to do with, again, all the social controversy that you alluded to, but rather has to do with losing out on new viewership, right? That you've got a static number of people who want to watch it, and some people are, dying off on the one end, and you're not renewing that with new viewers on the other end. So eventually you have to sort of adapt or die. And to be honest, right, like changing the kickoff by 5 yards or putting a pitch clock on pitchers in baseball games, those are band-aids on, it's deck chairs on the Titanic. It's whatever metaphor you want to use here, right? Those little fixes will not address what are fundamental design problems with these two sports. And the evolution of the way that baseball has been televised and marketed since we were kids to now tells the entire story, right? Like I've told this on the podcast before that I grew up watching the Rockies in Denver on Channel 2, right? They were on Channel 2 virtually every game that they played in the evenings in the summers. And so I'd come home, once it got dark out, I'd watch the last half of a baseball game, and that's just sort of how I ended up my night. Now you have to, have Fox Sport Rocky Mountain, or what is it now? It's changed names like 50 times.
I can't even think what it is.
Yeah, whatever it is. If you want to watch the Nuggets, you have to have Root Sports or whatever it is. If you want to watch, the only thing football has kind of going for it is that it's still on regular TV. But even the same article that we're talking about, and we should definitely post this link, makes the point that the NFL has done a really good job of strong arming people. Getting huge amounts of money from selling the rights to televise their games to CBS and to Fox and to those sorts of things. But as this viewership goes down, the script is going to be flipped, right? Like you held your product captive for a king's ransom, and eventually your viewership's going to go down, and you're not going to be able to pay people to take it off of your hands, right? I think that. Unless there's some real drastic changes to, again, the conception and the design of the games, the way that they're marketed, the way that we attract viewers, et cetera, the way that they're priced, all of those things, the drop-off could be precipitous, right? Again, I've said this on the podcast before, and this is definitely true. You don't have to go back that long to remember a time when the biggest sports products available were not football and basketball. They were, boxing and horse racing. You don't have to go back that far, right? Not even 100 years to know what was the most popular thing. So, it's putting blinders on to think, well, football is objectively the greatest sport product, and so we should have no fear that it will bounce back. Well, I'm not sure that's true. Yeah, I second everything that you said about soccer, right? I mean, it's back and forth. It's action the entire time, even if there's not a lot of goals. It's bounded. The game's over in 2 hours at the most.
But it
might be more captivating.
I guess I wonder. I could be wrong here, but let's think about the snippets, the products that you can package from those sports. Are they more conducive to the 5-second view than an entire baseball game? I guess baseball has home runs and good defensive plays. But are we to the point where we've seen so many of those now we don't care? And I think like soccer goals, you could easily package that into a 5-second clip, and people can consume. Yeah. You can watch a game in those pieces. The NBA, maybe we have dunks, or I guess the dunks are so rare now. Maybe that becomes the thing that we are drawn to. I just know that those two leagues definitely have a problem, and it has everything to do, in my opinion, with their inability to recognize the audience who is going to be consuming their product significantly in the next 10 to 15 years. I mean, the buying power of the 18-year-old, the 25-year-old in the next 10 years becomes significantly larger than it is now. And are they going to want to buy those products? Are they going to want to pay the subscription fees? Are they going to want to go to the games? And I don't know that they do. And in talking to the students, that you and I have every day, I don't see that love of those games or those sports or that interest that you and I have and the people and our friends have. And so I don't see the future as too bright for those leagues.
No, and we're clearly not the end of this either. Like we're at the beginning of it, right? Because there's a huge difference between you and I and, our kids, for example. I grew up watching TV with my parents. Pre-high-speed internet, obviously, pre-smartphone, pre-cell phone, pre-YouTube and Netflix and all of that stuff. And even I'm like, do I really want to sit down and watch this stuff on TV when I can watch it on my computer or watch it, on my phone from somewhere? Let alone kids who are, people who are 15 years younger than us or 20 years younger than us or 25 years younger than us who never sat down and watched TV, right? Who never. It's funny that you asked at the very beginning. I'm not sure if it made it onto the recording or not. You're saying your kids were fine. They'll go sit down and watch TV while we record this podcast, and my kids will too. But I know kids, neighborhood kids who. My neighbor across the street, he says his kids they don't watch TV. He's like they never ever like sit down on the couch. They don't watch TV. They don't watch movies. They don't go to the movies. That's just not what they do. Like they'll look on their iPads or they'll play on their computers. They'll go outside and play. But you don't sit down and watch TV for 3 or 4 hours. I mean, certainly baseball and football are their fates are handcuffed to that audience, right? To a TV audience, unless they can really think outside of the box, and I'm not sure. I'm not even sure what that would look like. But.
I think it's got to be a willingness to just recognize that how you package those games needs to change and embrace that. And so, to me, as you were talking, I had a conversation with a colleague of ours last week, and he was talking about watching the San Francisco Giants games. And in the morning, over a cup of coffee, instead of staying up late to watch it, you can just watch the highlights, or you can get a summary of it in 10, 15 minutes. And I think that the NBA is able to do that because the NBA regular season is so boring. People don't really care. So you can package those things into those short segments, and people are fine with it. And that will then, I would assume, build up the popularity for the playoffs. And that's really when things matter. And that's probably really when, money starts flowing in. It's like baseball has this affinity or this connection to the purity of its game and how it should be presented, that it's just not willing to do that. Because I feel, and I mean, it's a long season, but what if it was able to do that and then just recognize that people are very interested in the playoffs or the last month or two of the season, and stop pretending that the product that you have from April to July is that exciting, because it's not. The NFL, I guess, is in a unique situation because obviously they only play, 1 day a week. Now it's 3 or 4, but the point is there aren't that many games. And so it can do things a little different, but baseball is just so attached to its past, and you and I love it and our friends love it, but I can begin to see how people we know, the students we teach, are so turned off by it because it's not that interesting to consume.
Well, I guess I could see how people might not find. I don't know. I take your point. I understand your point. I still watch a lot of baseball. Yeah.
All right. Let's. We're at 42. Wonderful minutes.
Let's end with that incoherent rant.
That was great. That was
I like baseball.
Take on things. Everybody, you can find us, of course, on wherever you get your podcasts. We're there. We're on all of the social media sites, so make sure that you hunt us down and find us. We are giving away some badass buttons. If you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and then shoot me a DM of the buttons. Review. Same thing for YouTube. Dated. You can find our YouTube page.
You should give it like a pop socket.
A pop socket. I got to give out something. I know.
Something more. Come on. What year is it, man? You got to get with the times. You got to be more hip. I'm sorry. I interrupted your thing. Go back to your thing.
These buttons are sweet, though.
They are sweet. I don't have one yet. You got to mail me a button.
You'll get one. I'll see you soon. Look forward to Brian and I recording in person at least a time or two in the next week. We will do that. We'll be sure to live stream it. But all right, fellow, let's go back to being fathers. And thanks for being back on the show. It was good to reconnect, and I look forward to seeing you next.
Definitely, yeah.
All right, see you, old boy. See ya.